Good morning. My name is Ria. I'm a compulsive overeater and a bulimic, and I'm really grateful today to be able to be of service. Thank you all for coming. It's very exciting to see lots of new faces in this meeting. So thank you for people who are spreading the word and helping people come because it gives me an opportunity to be of service. So today we're talking about surrender. I'm kind of a word nerd, so I looked up the word surrender because I wanted to make sure that I was using it correctly. And they do use it in the big book of AA, which is my basic text and the basic text of overeaters of all A programs. And for those of you who have never been to one of my workshops before, I will tell you that I will quote from this quite often. Anyway, so there are multiple definitions for the word surrender. The first is to cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. That's the first, okay? The second one is to give up or hand over a person, a right, or possession, typically on compulsion or demand. The third is to lose a point or a game. The fourth is to abandon oneself entirely to or to give in to something. And the fourth is to cancel for an insured person and receive back a proportion of the premiums paid. So it's interesting because quite a few of these definitions apply to my experience as a compulsive overeater. So I want to talk about the first one first, okay? So to cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority, okay? That really, for me, I find that surrender in this program happens on 3 levels and they build on each other. If I'm not surrendered on the first level, I can't surrender on the next level. So my first level of surrender had to be with food. I'll share very quickly about my background. I am a compulsive eater. I used food to quell my anxiety from a very young age. 7, 8 years old. I was an obese child. I did all the things that we all do to try to lose weight, and none of them worked for me. I just continued to gain weight. And when I was 16 years old, I was well over 200 pounds. And to control my weight, I started binging and purging. And that was an on and off thing until I was about 19 when I went to my first OA meeting. But when I went to my first OA meeting, I didn't really understand what was going on because no one was weighing me. No one was telling me to buy any food or giving me pins or stickers or anything. They just were talking. First of all, they were talking about anything but food. I remember it was February, so somebody was talking about like their Valentine's Day. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what? Why? This is nothing like any experience I'd ever had before. But the person next to me identified themselves as a compulsive overeater, and I had never heard those words before. And when I heard those words, I thought, oh, okay, so if this is a name, if there's a name for this, then that means it's a real thing. And I'm not the only freak on this earth who does the weird stuff with food that I do. And so even though I didn't understand what was going on, it kept coming back. And for 2 years, I had to come to meetings and listen and sort of be on I was OA adjacent, like I was coming to meetings, but I wasn't really interested in doing the things that I saw other people talking about or that was recommended to me. I asked someone to sponsor me and she asked me to send her what I was eating. And I thought that was really weird. And I think I knew that I had a problem with food, but I didn't fully understand what that meant. I didn't realize that I was actually fighting against a compulsion that was inside of me. I just thought, okay, well, once I muster up enough willpower, I'll just stop, And then when I started going to meetings and they said I was powerless, I was like, well, if I'm powerless anyway, there's nothing I can do, so I might as well just, do what I'm doing. But then it got to a point where here's the thing, when I got into OA, then I started realizing what I was doing with food. All the fun stopped whenever I ate because I already knew, now I knew what was happening. It was like being in the mafia, like once you get in, you can't get out, that kind of a thing. So, when I compulsively ate, it wasn't the thrill was gone. And then it turned dark because I was like, okay, I know this isn't serving me anymore, and I wanted to stop, but I still couldn't stop. That was the scary dark place for me. Was there's sort of an evolution of my experience with this disease, which was using food works for me, protected me from all the things I didn't need. Now I see the consequences are not worth the price they're exacting of my life. So okay, I'm ready to change, but I can't stop now. That's when the rules are off. When I started seeing myself, the day came when I actually was at a dream internship. My whole life I had wanted to work for Disney, my whole life. And I got a job in college working at one of the parks, and I was so excited. It was something I'd always wanted to do. I had a dream of working at one of the studios and being part of making animated movies for kids. And it was like a very big beginning for me. I was very excited about it. Unfortunately, because I was in my disease, I could not really function so well as part of that program, to the point where I was calling out sick to work, to a job I really was excited to do, so I could stay home and binge. And there was one day I called out sick again, and across the street from the apartment where I lived, there was a convenience store. And I went across the street to the store and I bought, a thing of ice cream and a dozen donuts, and came home and ate about half of it. And I was so sick. And of course I purged, because God forbid any of those calories get absorbed into my system. But I lay down on my couch and the room was spinning and I was so, so sick. And I said to myself, I am never doing this again. This is horrible. 10 minutes later, I got up and went back to the convenience store. That, more than the food itself, was what scared me was how quickly I'd forgotten what I knew was true. And they talk about this in the big book. We can no longer differentiate the true from the false. I knew what was true, that this was making me sick and stealing the things that really meant something to me. I truly believe that had I had recovery, had I been a fully functional person, I probably could have worked my way up the system at Disney and done what I wanted to do there. Obviously, that's not what God wanted for me, but the point is, I had the capacity, I had the ability, I wanted what I was doing, and yet I could not stop myself. And that was scary to me. So that was really the beginning of my surrender, of understanding that I was dealing with an animal that was way bigger than just food, because it wasn't just food. Because the truth is, like, if you put something on the table, that thing is not calling me, it's not doing anything, it's just sitting there. The problem is something inside me that makes it impossible for me to not go eat those things. And I cannot stop myself when that thing is activated. That was what I had to surrender to. Because the truth is, that compulsion, that obsession can kick up for anything. It doesn't have to be ice cream. It can be drugs. It can be some guy who's giving me attention. It can be a sale I see on Temu, some dress I think is going to make me look fabulous and everyone fall in love with me. It doesn't matter what it is. I just realized that it was about the food, but it wasn't about the food. And it says, cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. And it got to the point where I was like, whoa. First of all, this thing is way bigger than me. This is an opponent I have been trying to fight against my entire life, and I have consistently lost. And I'm going to need to surrender to their authority and submit to their authority, because the truth is, they were my authority. This thing inside me, this obsession, was telling me what to do, and I was going and doing it. And when I introduced certain substances into my system and the physical craving took over, it was game over for me. There was no choice left. This was an authority, right? A higher authority than me. It made decisions for me that I could not make on my own. I could not decide against what the obsession and the physical craving was telling me to do. So I had to surrender to that. I had to cease resisting it. Okay, so for me, that's the step one experience. And put very simply, anyone who's not sure if they're a compulsive overeater, an addict of any kind, it really comes down to one thing. Can you stop when you want to and stay stopped comfortably? That's it. You don't have to weigh 300 pounds. You don't have to have, wrapped your car around a telephone pole. You don't have to have diabetes. You can have those things. But the bottom line is, can I stop when I want to and stay stopped comfortably? For me, the answer is no. And once I realized that for sure, that was my beginning of surrender. Okay? Now I want to talk about giving up or handing over a person, right, or possession, typically on compulsion or demand. Okay? So as I said, I went to my first meeting when I was 19 years old, and I didn't understand what was happening, but I kept coming back to meetings and doing my research and understanding where this disease was going to take me. And it's ironic because my darkest days in my compulsive eating was after I joined OA. But it's because I still thought that I could outsmart this thing, that I could outwin it. Like, if I have enough information, I'll be able to just know better. And there are lots of people in this book who they talk about who had all the information and they still couldn't stop themselves. Particularly, there was one person, his name is Fred. I'm going to find him very quickly. Mr. Fred. Okay, so Fred was a well-known partner in a well-known accounting firm. He had lots of money. He was successful. And so they first met Fred when he was in the hospital to recover from a case of jitters, right? And he said, listen, far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves, right? Like, just like I went to stay for a month at in fact, the top diet and fitness centers at the time. I don't know what it is now. In the United States, I lived there for a month because I needed to lose weight. That's it. I just needed to lose weight. That was really the problem. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized, and for a few days he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. So he decided he was done. This is a very capable person. He's, very successful in business. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. This is the joke that gets played on a lot of us, because a lot of us are high-functioning addicts. We're very capable. We have jobs, we have families, we have marriages, we're going, we're doing. On paper, we look great. And even for those of us who are, carrying extra weight, we still pull our lives together. We still have it, we're still getting it together because we're not alcoholics where we're falling down drunk all the time. We may be drunk on food, but somehow we manage to just keep chugging along. So if I'm still functional, then I got this. Don't worry, I'm good. I'm okay. But Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting he could do nothing about it himself. And this was my pervasive lie, that if I just find the right combination of diet and exercise and mindset, and I find the right self-help guru, and I get all the balls in the air at the same time, I'll lick this thing. I'm just not motivated enough. That's the problem. I just don't have the willpower. Willpower was a big word I heard, especially in the 90s. Like, you just need the willpower, He was positive that this humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. Okay, so his humiliating experience. Try being an obese girl growing up in the 90s when Kate Moss was the pinnacle of, beauty, and being rejected constantly, made fun of constantly, bullied in school, and basically made a spectator to life, and getting the message osmotically and out loud that you don't count because you are fat. You would only be, if only you lost weight, you would be beautiful. People said that to me. If only you lost weight, you would be beautiful. Or looking in magazines and seeing women living lives that I knew I would never have because I did not matter. That's pretty humiliating. Over and over and over again, getting rejected. So I thought, okay, I've been through enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go through this. And now I've been to all these meetings, so I know that this is a problem. So, okay, now I know that I can't eat these things, so I'm going to stop. That's why it baffled me that I didn't. I knew what the stakes were. I knew I didn't like the way my life was going, so why the hell was I going back to that convenience store? It made absolutely no logical sense, right? So let's read a little bit more about Fred. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, just like, hi, I was 16 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old, probably 250 pounds, if not more, because I stopped weighing myself at that point. I don't know what that is in stone. Sorry, I'm an ignorant American. But 250 pounds. The evidence was there. It wasn't like I was like, no, this is a healthy weight for me. Like I was fully aware that this was a problem. And yet I didn't stop. That doesn't make any sense. So it said, and he exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet was flat on his back nevertheless. Now, I can't say at the time that I was exhibiting splendid judgment and determination in all my other concerns. I was also making a mess of a lot of other things. But I at least could, go to classes and get up every day and semi-function. I hadn't been able to build enough of a life for myself to tear it down. Let's put it that way. Had I been able to build enough of a life for myself, I for sure would have destroyed it. But anyway, he basically talks about how he's going around with his day, everything's great, business is good, and then suddenly he gets the idea that he should just have a drink after his dinner, have a couple cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. So he ordered a cocktail, then he ordered another one. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. Uh-oh. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. This makes absolutely no sense. Just a few paragraphs before, he said he knows how humiliating this is. He's very well aware now of what alcoholism is because 2 AAs came and visited him in the hospital. It's not like he didn't have this information. He decided, okay, I know better now. I'm not going to do it. 4 paragraphs later, he's back in the hospital. What does that mean? That basically means that no matter how much information I have, no matter what I do, I cannot beat this thing myself. So the first thing is to know that I have this thing. That's the first thing. That's the thing I have to surrender to. I have to cease resistance to this opponent, right? I can't keep fighting this because it's going to win. Then the second thing is I'm not the one who's going to beat it, right? That's step 2. Because if I could beat it, I would have done it by now. It's really that simple. I am a very willful person. I have accomplished a lot in my 42 years on this planet. I managed to do a lot of things. I have 5 children. I have a career. I have a dog. I have a community. I live in a country that's at war. Like, I got my shit together, guys, okay? And yet, if you put me in the ring with the Ben and Jerry's and I take a bite of that, it's game over for me. And nothing I do is going to stop that. It's really that simple. So I have to give up, right? Typically on compulsion or demand. And it was demanded of me to give up my position as the power against which I could fight myself. The problem originated with me. So clearly I cannot be the source of the solution. It has to be something that's not me. And this is where the higher power, when they were talking about the spiritual solution, this is where that comes in. So now we're looking at step 2, right? We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This makes logical sense, right? Because now I've ceased resistance to the enemy, which is the compulsion in me, that allergy of the mind and body. And now I've given up a person, right, or possession, which to me is the right to eat whatever I want, let's say, typically on compulsion, right? So now I've given up I've ceased fighting and I've given up my ability to beat the solution myself. Because I've tried, and you're in this meeting listening to me right now, I bet you've tried too. So, and it hasn't worked for you, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. If it worked for you, we got nothing to talk about. Bye. enjoy the rest of your life. So now we're talking about a power greater than ourselves. So for me, I was not interested in a power greater than myself. When I grew up in a Jewish household that was not religious, we were traditional, and we had. Can everyone still hear me? We're good. Okay, good. We had, we had our practices, but we by no means were observant. And then when I was 15 years old, my father decided to become Orthodox, which means very religious, and it started World War III in my house. Because my mother was like, this is not what I signed up for. And my father, God bless him, he doesn't have a lot of social tools in his bag. And I think out of a desire to not make us feel pressured, he went in the opposite direction and didn't say anything and just kind of went and did his thing. And so even though he wasn't meaning to, I think it was communicated as rejection of us or not wanting us to be a part of it. So there was a lot of emotion around religion in general. And then when I was 14, my family took a trip here to Israel. And while we were here, a friend of ours who was supposed to spend Passover with us was killed in a terror attack. And I really I could not make sense of that. And then 2 days later, we turned on the TV in the hotel and we saw the Oklahoma City bombing. And I had no tools to deal with this kind of thing. My father had religion, but I didn't want to hear what he had to say. And my mother nobody knew what to say. And I didn't even know what to talk about because it was too much for my 14-year-old self to even comprehend or compute. And I remember at the time, the way I dealt with it was by eating matzah after matzah with cream cheese and grape jelly. That was what I could do. I could just eat and eat and eat and eat because the feeling of overwhelm by how terrifying the world was too much for me. And I decided, I had already, when I was young, I had heard about the Holocaust. I had heard about all these bad things that happened to Jewish people. And it just seemed to me like when you're Jewish, bad things happen to you. So like, why would you do that? Why would you want to do it? And so when I was 14, I made an agreement with myself that I am done being Jewish and I am never coming back to Israel ever. So God is laughing because I am now an Orthodox Jew who lives in Israel. So, that's for another day. But anyway, when my sponsor, because after I got to 2 years into program, I started, listening to what these people were saying and, being willing to follow directions. And the sponsor I had at the time said, you're going to need to develop a relationship with God or with a higher power. And I was like, no. Like, if you knew the God that I know, you would not ask me that because that God is no bueno. Like, only bad things happen when I hang out with that God. And the sponsor said to me, if you don't like your God, you can fire them and hire another one. Now, I was not a religious person at the time, okay? And I was still scandalized by that. I was like, that sounds like really, really sacrilegious. You can fire God. You can't do that. But she said, listen, let's for argument's sake say that God is everything, right? So if God is everything, then God can be anything. God is a palace with infinite doorways. So just pick one and go in. If that doorway is shut to you, find another one. There's 2 doors down, knock. If it opens, go in. Doesn't matter. And so my first prayer really that I ever said from inside was, hi, I don't know if you're there, but my sponsor says I'm supposed to talk to you. So, okay, I did it. Okay, thanks, bye. Like that was my first real prayer, Now, obviously things have evolved since then, but the point was, she was saying to me that if I want to beat this thing, something outside of me is going to have to do that for me. Now, some people, when they first come in, they say, okay, it's the group, it's the fellowship, it's meetings, it's, it's the posters on the wall, it's those cute little sayings that we have that get me through. It's the serenity prayer. Those things are valuable, absolutely. But from my experience, one cannot have long-term recovery because of a poster. I need to have a relationship with something that's greater than me. And this is true even for atheists. I know, dyed-in-the-wool atheists who have programs of recovery that I respect the hell out of. So it doesn't really matter what your higher power is, as long as it's not you. That's it. The only qualification for a higher power is that it's not me. Because when I made me my higher power, I ended up in a 12-step program. So clearly it doesn't work for me, right? So I have to hand over my rights to try to control my food and my weight and everything to this higher power. I use the word God because I don't have a better one. I can't come up with a better word. If you don't like the word God, don't use it. You can, you could call it palm tree. I don't care what it is. But you need a power that's greater than you. And if you don't believe in God, that's cool. It can be universal something. It can be, energy. Because the truth is, it's all the same thing. Einstein said, energy does not get destroyed. You cannot destroy energy. It only changes form. The source of energy is the same thing. It's always the same. It comes from the same place. It just changes form. So clearly there is something going on that we don't understand. There is a source of energy in this world. There is all different kinds of things happening. There are laws of nature. You want nature to be your higher power? Fine, whatever. It just can't be you. That's it. And so for step 2, I have to give up and hand over my right that I believe I have to eat whatever I want and control my food and eat how I want. Okay, so now I want to talk about the third definition of abandoning oneself entirely to something. Okay, Anik, how am I doing on time? Hold on, you're on mute, babe. Let me unmute you. Hold on one second.
You got 15 minutes to go.
Perfect. Thank you, honey. Okay, so last definition is to abandon oneself entirely to or to give into. It says abandon oneself entirely to a powerful emotion or influence in this definition. So I guess we could say influence, but this is going to take us to the third step. Okay, now the third step for me probably was the one it took me the longest time to get. Because number one, aside from a prayer, there's not much you do with step 3 except figure out what it's about. So I want to talk a little bit in depth about step 3, which is we turned our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Now, even Bill says in the book, what does that mean and what do we do? Right? Because if I say to you, okay, Carol, go turn your life and your will over to God. You're going to be like, do I get in the car? Like, can I do that on Amazon? Like, how does that work? So here's the story. We have to understand what the idea of will and life even means, right? So we're going to read a little illustration of what our lives look like when our will is in charge, okay? So here we go. Page 60 in the big book, if you're interested. Second paragraph from the bottom, or you can just listen. All good. Being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? Okay. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Well, here's my question. What does being in collision with people and self-will have to do with me eating too much ice cream? What is the relationship here? Why does it matter how I'm living? What does that have to do with anything? So I want to go back for a second to the doctor's opinion on page XXIV to, in my opinion, the most important sentence in this entire book. So on the very bottom, second to last line of that page, he says he describes the alcoholic, okay? They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. The sequence of that sentence is very important because he's not saying these people take drinks and then they feel restless, irritable, and discontented. It's actually the opposite. The default setting of the alcoholic is restless, irritable, and discontented. And then to get ease and comfort from that consistent feeling of restlessness, of discomfort in my own skin, of feeling like something's wrong all the time, or something's off, or if only I had, or if only they did, I take a drink. And then what happens? I kick off the phenomenon of craving. So when I take the drink away, I'm not actually solving the problem. I'm actually just taking away my medication. Now I'm just unmedicated. Now I'm just restless, irritable, and discontent. That's the problem, because there's only so long I can live like that before I need to get ease and comfort from somewhere. And if I take my drug away, we've got a problem. So really, back to step 3, what they're talking about here is we need to change the way that we live, the way that we think, and the way that we interact, our entire perception of life, so that we don't get ourselves into that restlessness, irritability, and discontentment. That's the solution. It's not about not eating. It's about changing the way that I'm living so that food is no longer necessary. Okay, so let's keep reading. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like the actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. So if you have an actor, the actor's not the one in charge, right? They have one job, and that's to play the part that they have. But the director is the one who's in charge of the whole show. And you should know, I relate with this on a very personal level, because when I was in theater in high school, they hired a professional director to come direct my high school play. And I was like, yeah, thanks for stopping by. I got this. Like, I'm 16 years old, okay? And I'm like, no, I got this, okay? And just to show you what an effective director I was, there was a friend of mine who was in the play, and after something that I said to her, she's now a veterinarian, okay? Like, she went as far from the theater as possible because I was such a delight to work with. So anyway, if his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. So that's the pervasive lie that we tell ourselves, right? If only you would act this way, if only my house were bigger or cleaner, or my husband wasn't such an idiot, or my kids behaved and treated me with respect, or I got paid more, or I had a cuter wardrobe, or my car didn't break down all the freaking time, my life would be great. And everybody would be happy. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. I don't have much relationship. I don't have much experience with these qualities. I'm just a bulldozer who just yells at everybody. But for those people who can like fake being nice, my hat's off to you. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. So this is what's happening, okay? I'm living under the delusion that everything out there determines my state of being in here. And if only things out here were exactly as I think they should be, then I'll be okay in here. When actually, it's the opposite. If I'm okay in here, it doesn't really matter what's going on out here. Okay? But this is the alcoholic lie. That I need people, places, and things to be exactly as I need them to be in order for me to feel ease and comfort. And so these are the things I chase after for my entire life. And 9 times out of 10, I'd say even 10 times out of 10, life is not going to be what we think it should be. And that makes me restless, irritable, and discontented. And if I'm restless, irritable, and discontented for long enough, what do? Go back to the food. Okay? Well, let's keep going. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right? Like, I am the queen of self-pity. If only everybody would just get it together. I was complaining to somebody the other day about how hard it is to clean my big house. Like, do you hear what I'm saying? I live in this big, gorgeous house with room for everyone in my family. We have a pool, we have yard, it's gorgeous. And I'm like, oh, it's just so hard to clean. Like, God, what an idiot, Like, it's just so hard for me. So he decides to exert himself more. He becomes on the next occasion still demanding or gracious. Demanding, definitely not gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Okay, this, in my opinion, is the second most important sentence in this entire book. Why? Because no matter what I do, no matter how many knots I turn myself into to change my outer circumstances, the play will never suit me, ever. Because even if things are 100% perfect out here, which they never, ever are, I will still have that restlessness, irritability, and discontent. There will always be something just a little bit off. There will always be this sense of something missing, or if only, or living in the past of, well, what if I had gone out with that guy? Or in the future, like, well, what if this happens? It may be great now, but tomorrow everything could fall apart. It's a me problem. And so the play will never suit me. And that's why I have to give up trying to run the play, let somebody else run the play, and get back into the part that I'm supposed to play in it. Because it's exhausting to try to run the play all the time. And because we get so tired, what do? We eat. Because we're working so hard, and why don't people just do what we say? You know how many times I've said to people, like, if only my husband would just do the things that I think he should do. Like, doesn't he realize how happy he'd be? Doesn't he know? And he's making my life so hard because it's all about me. Okay. So here we go. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, somewhat, not entirely. He is sure that other people are more to blame. It's your fault that I'm this way. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. I already beat him there, but I'm glad we're on the same page now. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Do you know people have told me, I don't have resentments, I'm a really nice person. Let me tell you something. I have no interest in nice people. None. I hate nice people. You know why? Because they're not honest. They're nice, but they're not real. So you can be nice to me till the day is long, but I will not trust you as far as I can throw you. Because if you're just being nice because you want me to think you're nice, that's why I was nice to people. I wasn't very good at it, but I would try to be nice to people so they think I was nice. Because all I was thinking about was when I walked away from that conversation and them looking at each other going, oh, she's so nice. I don't care. I heard nothing they said to me, but I just want them to think that I'm nice. Okay, because if everybody loves me, then I'll feel okay. Then I'll be enough, right? What is his basic trouble? Right, we said that. Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only he manages well? That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to control people, places, and things so that we feel better. It's not going to work. Once again, if it really worked, we would have done it already. It's the same thing. Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? I mean, sometimes I just wish, I want to be like Lucy in the Charlie Brown comics, maybe I'm dating myself, where she sets up this therapist booth and people could just come up to her and she could give them advice. I should just set that up in the center of my town. Be like, come tell me how to live your life and I will be happy to tell you because I know what you should be doing. People aren't so interested. I don't get it. I don't know why they don't want to hear what I have to say, but whatever. Anyway, and do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show. Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? I mean, think about it, right? This is the example that I use a lot. And if you've come to my workshops before, you've probably heard this. But there was an old TV show called Charlie's Angels. And the show opened with these three cute little agents in their cute outfits sitting around a little speaker radio thing, and the voice comes through and it's Charlie. Charlie says, hey, angels. The angels say, hey, Charlie. And Charlie says, okay, here's your mission. And then the show is the angels go and do the mission. Now, if we had a show where the angels were like, no, that's not a good mission. That's a stupid mission. I'm going to go do this mission. And then another angel says, well, I'm going to go do this mission. And the third angel says, I don't like that mission. I'm going to do my mission. And then they fight with each other. Nothing gets done. But guess what? That's what we humans do. And not just addicts, by the way. Every single person. 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you. I am an angel who thinks she's Charlie. And then I wonder why I'm blowing up my own house. Do you get it? That's what's happening here. And then I look at my house, and instead of saying, oh God, I blew up my own house, I go, God, why is my house on fire? God, poor me. All my stuff is burning. When really I'm the one who set it on fire. So if I want to live free of the restless, irritable, and discontent, I have to abandon myself entirely to something else. And by abandoning myself, I don't just mean me. I mean my ideas about who I should be. I abandon what I think I want for my life. Like I told you before, I was supposed to be a producer, screenwriter, movie star, Hollywood, mogul who like ran the Disney studios. If I had gotten what I wanted, I would have sold myself way short. Today, I live in Israel as an Orthodox mom, and I'm a professional writer, and I love it. And people shoot missiles at me, and it's fun. It's great. So this is my life. Now, I'm making jokes about it because the truth is, my life is still so excellent. And I've surrendered, I've given it all over to God. I've abandoned myself. So if God wants me in Israel with, ballistic rockets shooting at me and I go into the safe room with my family, that's where I'll go. Is it what I would have chosen? No, but I'm here and clearly there's service I'm supposed to be doing here. So if nothing else than to say, guess what? I've been in missile attacks and I've stayed abstinent. So don't tell me I can't stay abstinent because it's my birthday. Not true. Okay? Not true. Anyway, so the third step is me saying I'm abandoning my role as the director of my life because once again, me trying to run my own life brought me to a 12-step program. So clearly I was not killing it, okay? I was not doing a good job. So now I am abandoning all of it. I am surrendering all of it, putting everything on there. My job, my family, my husband, my kids, my safety, my life expectancy, my bank account, all of the things that I thought I needed to control in order to feel okay is no longer my responsibility. I have to abandon all of it in order to live in ease and comfort. I don't want the restless, irritable, and discontent anymore because that's the dangerous state of mind that brings me back to the food. I need to live in ease and comfort. So that means instead of, now that doesn't mean it just naturally happens. It's constant work. I have a friend who I met many, many years ago in a way. She's since passed away. Her name was Jen. And she used to say that when I take the third step, I throw the towel in. I throw the towel in, I give it to God, and then I spend the rest of my life trying to pull it back. So every day things come up where I think I've abandoned it and then I take my will back. Or I want to argue with God. Yeah, but, I'll give you an example, okay? My mom died 15 years ago. She was 55 and I was 27. In my opinion, that's bullshit. I call bullshit on that. I should have gotten a lot more time with her. And then my dad married someone who really has my father's children are not her priority. Let's put it that way. I'm sure she's a good person somewhere, but we are not on the top of her priority list. And my family has fractured and it's been very painful. Again, I call bullshit. And there are times where I'm like, I could really use my mom right now, especially these days when, like I said, we've got rockets and stuff. I could really use my mom. Or I would like to call my dad and say, can you just come hang out here for a couple weeks? But I know if he comes, she comes too. And I'm not interested.
That's time, Ria.
Thank you. I will wrap up. So, for whatever reason, God thinks I can handle this with my husband and with him, and I trust him. And by the way, I use the word him because I don't have another word. I could say her also. It doesn't matter. The God of my understanding is genderless. It's way bigger. The more I learn about God, the more I realize the less I know about God. So, if any of that offends you, just throw it out. But my point is, today I surrender to reality as it is, because that's the only way I'm going to live peacefully. I've given up the fight. And that's it. Thanks.